It's that time. Welcome to day 26 of reading every single day for the rest of my life. Today we got Discipline is Destiny by Ryan Holiday. I'm at page 235. I'm going to start the clock. Starting now. It's that time. Let's go. When he was criticized, he shrugged it off. He had no time for sycophants or slanderers. Like Antoninus, when he was shown to be incorrect, he admitted error and changed his mind. It was busy, ceaseless life, but he found stillness inside it. Man aging, even to study philosophy from a cot to his tent, far from his library. He worked hard to be present, to concentrate every minute like a Roman, winnowing his thoughts and tuning out distraction, doing what was in front of him with both tenderness and tenacity when he learned from his hero. Whatever it was, he did it best, whether he was celebrated or despised for it. You don't have to turn this into something, he reminded himself when someone did something wrong or said something untrue about him. When he lusted after something, he stopped himself, turning those desires to stone before they burned through him and did something he'd regret. He tried to make beautiful choices, tried to look for the best in people, tried to put himself in their shoes, tried to lead by serving. It was the pride of Marcus's life that he not only didn't need to ask anyone for favors, but that any time anyone asked him for something, money, advice, a hand, he could be generous. Amid plenty, amid intrigue, Marcus kept and was kept by this beautiful motto: unrestrained moderation. It is one thing to be a king, it is another to be a philosopher king, and another thing entirely to be a good philosopher king. To be a kingly person, independent of your title, enfranchised, indifferent to what makes no difference, self-contained, self-motivated, devoted, hitting every right note at the right time in the right way. The kind of character that Marcus Aurelius cultivated was such that it brought distinction to his position, rather than the position bringing honor to his person. To remain oneself in a world that pushes for conformity takes courage. It takes courage as well as temperance to be constrained in a world of excess, where we attacked and mock those who don't indulge in the pleasures we have rationalized and passions we have excused in ourselves. Did he lose temper from time to time? Of course, few leaders can claim otherwise, but the ancient historians provide us no evidence that Marcus ever was vindictive, petty, cruel, or out of control. His reign was free of scandals, of shameful acts, of corruption. Isn't that a pretty low bar? Not when you compare it to the sickening and brutal list of crimes and disasters put together by his predecessors and successors. Right on down to today, where it seems that the hardest thing to find in the world is an honest and decent person in a position of significant leadership. Although Marcus was of good character, he knew that character was something that needs to be constantly worked on, constantly improved. He understood the second we stop trying to be better and the moment we start gradually getting worse is the moment we start gradually getting worse. After the passing of Antoninus, he maintained his lifelong study of philosophy, humbly gathering up his tablets and going to school even as an old man. He never wanted to stop learning, never wanted to stop getting better. What was he after? What was the destiny he sought? It was, of course, an impossible ideal, but the work of his life was movement toward the place where he would be never swayed by pleasure or pain, purposeful when in action, free from dishonesty or dissimulation, and never dependent on action or inaction from anyone else. Or, as he described it elsewhere, self-reliance and indisputable immunity to the rice rolls of fortune. That would be nice, wouldn't it? In a sense that the temperance is self-sufficiency, purity, clarity, power, pure pose. There's only one way to get there, and not through epiphany. There's only one way to get there, and it's not through epiphany. Speaking of her late husband, Mr. Rogers, Joanne Rogers, remarked that if you make him out to be a saint, people might not know how hard he worked. Antoninus and Marcus Aurelius are not dusty old parables from the past. They are not two-dimensional figures printed on the pages of history books. They were human beings, and they were not perfect, but they were perfect. But if they were perfect, they would not give us hope. We love them because they tried, because they corrected in failure, because they were humble in victory, because they did the work and got the results. This is what produces the path for us. Just as living example and the loving instruction of Antoninus helped mold Marcus Aurelius, so, too, can the lives and lessons of Antoninus and Marcus Aurelius mold us. We do not have to add our names to the list of sad stories of cautionary tales that success so often writes. Through self-discipline we can find our destiny, access to a higher plane of consciousness and being and excellence. Antoninus found it, and the path he carved showed the way of Marcus. Will we follow in their footsteps? Will we admire these rows, or will we go the way of the Neros? That is the question we must ask ourselves now. Tolerant with yourself, strict with yourselves. Tolerant with others, strict with yourself. Cato the Younger was just as strict as his great-grandfather. He was indifferent to wealth. He wore ordinary clothing and walked around Rome barefoot and bareheaded. In the army, he slept in the ground with his troops. He never lied. He never went easy on himself. It came to be an expression in Rome. We can't all be Catos. No one illustrated the impossibility of Cato's standards like Cato's own brother, Caepio. He loved luxury and favored perfumes and kept company that Cato would have allowed himself. And yet Cato was humble enough in his own temperance to remember that it's called self-discipline for a reason. While we hold ourselves to the highest standards and hope that our good behavior is contagious, we cannot expect everyone else to be like us. It's not fair, nor is it possible. Perhaps it was a rule articulated by Cato's great-grandfather that helped Cato love and support his brother despite their different approaches to life. I am prepared to forgive everybody's mistakes, Cato the elder said, except my own. Ben Franklin, many generations later, would put forth an even better rule. Search others for their virtues, thyself for thy voice. Or as Marcus Aurelius put it, tolerant with others, strict with yourself. The only person you get to be truly hard on is you. It will take every ounce of your self-control to enforce that, not because it's hard to be hard on yourself, but because it's so hard to let people get away with the things you never allow in yourself, to let them do things you know are bad for them, to let them slack off when you see so much more in them. But you have to, because their life is not in your control, because you'll burn yourself out if you don't get to a place where you live and let live. Credit them for trying, credit them for context, forgive, forget, help them get better if they're open to help. Not everyone has trained like you have, not everyone has knowledge you have, not everyone has the willpower or commitment you have, not everyone signed up for this kind of life either. Which is why you need to be tolerant, even generous with people. Anything else is unfair, it's also counterproductive. In 1996, the New Jersey Nets were trying to draft a young future superstar named Kobe Bryant. After an in-person workout, the team had to put him on a plane to the West Coast. The team, which had a lean and efficient culture, booked him a middle seat and coach for a 6 hours cross-country flight. Kobe wouldn't forget it. A moment of cheapness cost the Nets a shot of one of the greatest basketball players in history. I'm going to reread that. Middle seat... The team, which then had a lean and efficient culture, booked him a middle seat and coach for a 6-hour cross-country flight. Kobe wouldn't forget it. A moment of cheapness cost the Nets a shot at one of the greatest basketball players in history. As it happens, Kobe himself would struggle his entire career with some version of this problem. He was one of the most exciting and dedicated players to ever step on a basketball court, but he had trouble accepting that his teammates couldn't all be Kobe's. In fact, many of them did not want to be Kobe's. As he tried to drive them as hard as he drove himself, he often drove them into the dirt, or in other cases, like with Shaquille O'Neal drove them away, depriving himself of a talented supporting cast that in the end could have earned him another ring or two, at least. We talked earlier about keeping your cool. It's almost certain that the number one cause of angry outbursts from successful or talented people is the way that other people don't measure up. Why can't they get such simple things right? Why can't they just do it like we showed them the first time? Why can't they just be like us? Because they are not us. And even if they were, it is far to expect something of them that they are never signed up for. Gandhi's friends always appreciated the grace he gave them, not judging them for their choices, for their less strict lives they led. Dost thou think that because thou art virtuous, Sir Toby asks in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night, there shall be no more cakes and ale? Let them have their fun, let them live and work as they please. You've got enough to worry about when it comes to your own destiny. It's not on you to try to change everyone else. Be a strong, inspiring example and let that be enough. And even then, try to be empathetic. In the run up to the Gulf War, Colin Powell kept the fact that he was sleeping in his office a complete secret from his staff. The burden fell on his shoulders, not theirs, and he did not want them to feel like they had to try, even if they could, to match him sacrifice for sacrifice. One of Lincoln's secretaries would marvel at the way the president never asked perfection of anyone. He did not even insist for others upon the high standards he set for himself. While good discipline is contagious, we can also be strong enough to accept that we are the only one who must live with such a severe case of it. Discipline is our destiny. From Antoninus, Marcus Aurelius learned that just trying to keep our own faults is hard enough work to keep us busy for a lifetime. None of us are perfect that we can afford to spend much time questioning other people's courage, nitpicking their habits, trying to push them to reach their potential. Not when we have so much further to go ourselves. Understanding this should just not make us less harsh, but also more understanding. That's true. Both Queen Elizabeth and her husband Philip struggled with this when it came to their children as well as their siblings. Both were strict with themselves in beliefs and duties, so much that it might have turned off their children to the concept. Better to follow the model of Cato and Marcus Aurelius. Cato didn't lord himself. Cato didn't lord himself over his brother, he loved him. With his step-brother, Lucius Verrius, Marcus didn't hold his nose. He found things to love and appreciate at him. Things that Marcus didn't have himself. And his weaknesses? Marcus used his brother's vices to improve himself. Both were made better by being in each other's lives. Both were enriched by the common ground and affection they gave in each other. This is the higher plane, when over self-discipline can be complemented by passion, by kindness, understanding, love. The fruit of temperance should not be only isolation. That would be a better fruit indeed. Superiority is not a weapon that you wield on other people. In fact, we have a word for that kind of intemperance: egotism. Other people would choose to live differently. They may attack us for our choices, or out of insecurity or ignorance. They may well be rewarded for things we find aberrant or ill-disciplined. And that's for them to deal with, and for us to ignore. The journey we are on is one of self-actualization. We leave other people's mistakes to their makers. We don't try to make everyone like us. Imagine if we were successful. Not only would the people be boring, but there would be so many fewer people to learn from. The better we get at this, the kinder we become, and more willing to look the other way. We're on our own journey, and yes, it is a strict and difficult one. But we understand that other people are on their own path, doing the best they can, making the most of what they have been given. It's not our place to judge. It is our place to cheer them on and accept them. Make others better. Queen Elizabeth's father was like Antoninus, not originally selected for greatness. He became king only by accident, due to the abdication of his brother in a fit of passion. Yet his impact on history would be enormous. It wasn't simply that he led Britain through a terrible war alongside Churchill, but also because of the impact he had on the people around him. In conquering a crippling stutter, George would have inspired generations of young people struggling with that difficulty. But more ordinarily, in a way that every single parent can, he achieved immortality and lasting influence through his daughter. While his power was constrained by the Constitution and cancer struck him down at age 56, his example loomed over his young Elizabeth, not just during his lifetime, but every day since. As she asked herself, what would my father have done? The same was true for Cato the Younger, who in everything he did, everything he tried to be, was to live up to the example, to honor the legacy of his great-grandfather, that stricken Arister Stoic, who he had never even met. The same would go for countless generations who would look to both Catos as heroes. Some 100 years after Cato's death, Seneca would advise that we all choose ourselves a Cato, a ruler to measure ourselves against, a model to inspire us to be what we're capable of being. When Nero's goons came to kill Seneca, he drew on Cato's example for strength in the last moments of his life. Some 1,700 years after that, George Washington would model his entire life on Cato's example, choosing his famous mantra from the mouth of his hero. The two men had never met Cato, but he had made them stronger. His discipline stiffened their spine when it counted. Cato and King George V, then, by being so struck with themselves, actually had the effect that many leaders who are strict with their followers fail to achieve. They made people better. To reach our destiny will require such a hero. To reach your destiny will require such a hero, but to be truly but to truly fulfill it, you will need to become such a hero yourself. To live in such a way that you can call others to reach their own. Is this not what made Antoninus so great? His example, his faithfulness, his pauseness, it served him well. It was good for his own sake, but also it's molded and shaped Marcus Aurelius. And Antoninus did not have to be strict with his young charge. His strictness was contagious, as it were all the other virtues. As Longfellow wrote about Florence, Nightingale, and indeed all truly disciplined and wonderful people, by their overflow raise from what is low. Think about the Churchill in those dark days of World War II. His courage, his self-control, his coolness under pressure. It helped his country find theirs. That's what great leaders do. They make people better. They help them become what they are. As it was written in the Bhagavad Gita, the path that a great man follows becomes a guide to the world. The self-disciplined don't berate. They don't ask for anything. They just do their job. They don't shame either, except perhaps subtly by their own actions. In the presence we feel called to step forward, to reach deeper, because they have shown that is possible. Happy is the man who can make themselves better, not merely when he is in their company, but even when he is in their thoughts. Seneca wrote, speaking not only of Cato, but all the men and women who inspired him. That's the power of discipline. It makes you better, and then still better because of the positive effect it has on the world and around you. We don't all have to be Catos. Again, the expression implies that we can't. But we can be a positive force in our community. We can show our children, our neighbors, our colleagues, our employees what good choices look like. We can show what commitment looks like by showing up each day. We can show what it means to resist provocation or temptation. We can show how to endure. We can show how to be patient. Maybe they'll appreciate this now. Maybe they'll hate us for it now. Maybe we'll be celebrated. Maybe we'll be hated. We don't control that. What's up for us is that we are good, that we do it right, that we conquer ourselves, that we can't force anyone else to do the same. But we can plant a seed. We can rest comfortably in our destiny, knowing that eventually, inevitably, it'll make a difference for someone, because like courage, there is something contagious about discipline. The fire within us can burn bright enough to warm others. The light within us can illuminate the path for others. What we accomplish can make things possible for others. It starts with us. It starts within us. But it doesn't stop there. Our discipline can be contagious, and if it isn't, how strong is it really? Certainly, Queen Elizabeth's failures with her own children and extended family is a mark against her, just as Marcus Aurelius' failures with a son, Commodius, reflects poorly. Grace under pressure. Hemingway was once asked for his definition of courage. He didn't say rushing into battle or slaying wild beasts. It wasn't staring down powerful interests, though his definition didn't preclude these things. Grace under pressure. That was his phrase. Poise. Discipline when it counts. The queen has been calm and controlled as her life was threatened, as objects fell from the sky or the media besieged her palaces. But to her, that was all part of her job. After the 7/7 terrorist attacks in 2005, in which 52 people killed in the London subway system, she explained why this equanimity matters, that it was a statement of character. I want to express my admiration for these people of our capital city, she said to the grieving yet resilient British people, who in the aftermath of yesterday's bombings are calmly determined to resume their normal lives. That is the answer to this outrage. In an address in early days of the pandemic, she would return to the same themes. I hope in the years to come, everyone will be able to take pride in how they responded to this challenge, she said. And those who come after us will say that the Britons of the generation were as strong as any, that the attributes of self-discipline, of quiet good-humored resolve and fellow feeling still characterize this country. In the year 175, Marcus Aurelius was betrayed by General Avidius Cassius in an attempted coup. As always, Marcus responded with poise, even as he and his family were in mortal danger. The nearer a man is to a calm mind, he wrote of such moments of crisis. The closer he is to strength, a real man doesn't give way to rage or panic. He reminded himself, willing himself to be like Antoninus. Such a person has strength, courage, and endurance, he would say, unlike the angry and complaining. That doesn't just happen. As you know, it's the culmination of years of study and practice, of failing and getting back up, of getting better each day. In my own case, Napoleon would say, it's taken me years to cultivate the self control to prevent my emotions from betraying myself. Napoleon may have been an ambitious megalomaniac, but no one could deny his poise on the battlefield. Conversely, the samurai Musashi's genius was the ability to disrupt the poise of his opponents. He'd use any and every trick in the book to shake them, to break their concentration, to make them upset. Once he did, they were beatable. Grace under pressure looks beautiful, but it's function of magisterial self-control and will. Of course, the person is scared. They are tired, they are provoked, but they manage to subsume all that. They rise above it. There is no leader, no artist, no parent who had made their whole lives about high-pressure situations. Without moments when it felt like things were spinning out of control, without a singular moment in many cases where everything rested on what they did next. This is where they show who they are. This is where their destiny is realized. We are told the story of a Roman knight named Pastor, whose young and popular son was sent to a prison by Caligula for some manufactured offense. Pastor attempted to intervene on his son's behalf, and so, for the cruel spite of it, Caligula ordered the boy's execution. To torture him further, Caligula then asked the man to dinner the night of his son's death, an invitation the man could not refuse. What did the pastor do? What could he do? He showed up, but he refused to betray even a hint of suffering or rage. Caligula toasted his health of the man, drained his cup to the last drop. The emperor passed down some gifts and accepted them. We can imagine Pastor sitting there, surrounded as he was by laughter and people feeling the loneliest and saddest and angriest man in the world. Yet he shed no tears, uttered no harsh words, and otherwise acted as his beloved boy had been spared from this act of capricious cruelty. How could he do this? To endure a loss is one thing, but to stand there as a knife is twisted for the pleasure of cruel, deranged monster. To keep down food at the table of the murder, to drink with perfect self-control when you have to retch and scream. Who could stand it? Had he just gone numb? Was the pastor an unfeeling brute? Was he broken in spirit, bereft and encouraged? No, the answer is much simpler than that. He had another son. His poise could not fail him, lest he fail his children, and so he didn't. Drawing an unspeakable, incomprehensible strength and dignity, he made it through. He kept his family safe. We need to understand that temperance is more than just being mild or calm in stressful situations. It's more than just putting up with the occasional criticism or keeping some of your urges in check. Sometimes it's having the strength not to do the thing you want to do more than anything else in the world. It's holding back the most natural and understandable and forgivable feelings in the world. Taking it personally, running away, breaking down, locking up with fear, celebrating with joy, cursing in anger, exacting retribution. To indulge these passions would to give your opponents exactly what they want, or worse, to harm an innocent person. A coup, a hostile interview, a game on the line with millions watching, a painful lie, a dangerous, life-threatening situation, a career-altering bet where all your chips get pushed to the center. For the people we love, we are strong enough to get through anything. For the cause of the calling we have committed to, we are strong enough to endure it. We have to be. We can swallow our pain, as Pastor had to. We can gather ourselves up, as Marcus did. As the Queen has gone, as the Queen had done over and over again. We do it because they're watching. Our kids, our followers, our students, the world at large. We not only don't want to let them down, we want to inspire them. We want to show them what's possible. We want to show them what we really believe in this stuff. It doesn't just matter what you bear, Seneca would say. It matters how you bear it. The truly great bear it with the grace, poise, courage, discipline. On Christmas Day, 1998, General Charles C. Krulak arrived at Marine Corps Base Quantico, expecting to find an enlisted man on duty at the guard station. He was surprised not to find him. He was even more surprised to find Brigadier General Jim Matisse working the post. Had something happened? No, but the man who was assigned guard duty that day had a family that Matisse thought he had ought to be with them. I'm going to redo that. No, but the man who was assigned guard duty that day had a family that Mattis thought he ought to be home with them, despite some 20 years of seniority and a million other things he could have been doing with that time. Mattis chose to take over the unpleasant duties of an ordinary soldier. A leader must be selfless. They must sacrifice. They must face the same deprivations as everyone else in the organization. If you can do this, Mattis learned from the writings of General Viscount Slim. They will follow you to the right of the end of the world. The privilege of command is command. Mattis once told a lieutenant he'd got caught shirking. You don't get a bigger tent. In fact, the best commanders take the smaller tent. They pass their extra provisions on to the troops. They don't go easier on themselves. They go harder because they know that it's not just about them anymore. We are not on the level. A foot soldier once complained to a Xenophon that he had led the 10,000 Greeks out to Persia. You are riding out on a horseback while I am wearing myself off with a shield to carry. Hearing this, Xenophon jumped down and carried the man's shield and the rest of the man's shield the rest of the way. Being the boss of a job, being a leader, is something you earn. You get elevated to that plane by your self-discipline, by moments of sacrifice like this. When you take the hit or responsible on behalf of someone else, success does not free you from self-control. We have said it does not free you from hard work or consequences either. Now you will have to help yourself. Now you have to help others carry their loads too, and you will do this gladly because you accepted the rewards. You also accepted the responsibility. Greg Popovich turned the fine and the criticism to his players could have longer careers, and so other coaches in the future would benefit from an outcome in practice. Harry Belafonte paid the bills to the king's family and would have little peace of mind, and could have a little peace of mind, a little rest. Harry Belafonte paid the bills so the king family could have a little peace of mind, a little rest. When Antoninus took the throne, he reminded his wife that they would now have to be more generous. They would need to be more stricter with themselves as well, more in control of themselves. Now that we have gained an empire, he said, we have lost even what we had before. It'd be wonderful if power or success exempted us from everything time-consuming, pedestrian, inconvenient, difficult. In practice, it obligates us to those things even more. It demands more of us. That's just how it shakes out. Can you handle that? The leader shows up first and leaves last. The leader works hardest. The leader puts others before themselves. The leader takes the hit. Everything else is just semantics and titles. As self-evident as it seems, it's sadly not the norm. For every Marcus Aurelius who sells the place furnishing during a plague, there are senators who head for warmer weather while their constituents freeze in their homes, without power or water. For every CEO who gave up their salary during the pandemic when there were companies that took government bailouts and then laid people off, and then gave bonuses to their executives, for every person who sacrificed for the sake of the public during the pandemic, there were prime ministers who threw parties and governors who treated themselves to large dinners at the French Laundry. To many leaders, Plutarch laments and that the greatest benefit in governing is the freedom from being governed from themselves. No, you're the only one who has to follow the rules to the letter. You're the only one who has to show you really mean it. Sit right here. I'm a little tired. Just a little bit. Everything that General Mattis told his troops about sacrifice, everything about helping each other out, about duty, about humility, about sympathy, none of it would have mattered as did he had not been caught time and time again actually living by those ideals. We have to show, not tell. First in line for danger, last in line for rewards. First in line for duty, last in line for recognition. To lead you have to bleed, figuratively speaking, but sometimes also literally. Is it really unfair, or is it that you have signed up, or is it what you have signed up for? And by the way, isn't it also what you get paid for the big bucks for? That's the privilege of command. Be kind to yourself. And be kind to yourself. Fix the camera. That's better. Cleanthes was normally one to mind his own business, but as the Stoic philosopher walked through the streets of Athens one morning, he came upon a man berating himself for some failure. He couldn't help but say something, stopping to intervene with the upset stranger. Remember, he said kindly, you're not talking to a bad man. Of course, the entire point of self-discipline is that we are strict. We hold ourselves to high standards. We don't accept causes. We push ourselves always to be better. But does that mean that we whip ourselves? That we hate ourselves? That we treat ourselves or talk to ourselves in a bad person? Absolutely not. Yet we slip unconsciously into these negative conversations all the time. You suck, you screwed up, you blew it. You think that Dalai Lama walks around treating herself like that? You blew it. So, you are not perfect. You are not superhuman. No one is. The writer of Tanchi Nyasi quotes remind us that not all of us always be Jackie Robinson. Can always be Jackie Robinson. Not even Jackie Robinson was always Jackie Robinson. The same goes for Cato, for Martin Luther King Jr., for Toni Morrison, for Queen Elizabeth, and for Marcus Aurelius, too, who reminded himself and all of us not to feel exasperated. Oh. Already? Holy shit, that was... Holy shit, that was quick. Oh my gosh. Alright. Let's go! That was day 26. We are at page top of 258. Let's go, man. I really love this book. We are almost done. I think 2 more days and we have this book finished. Let's go. And then we got the Alien book, and then we're gonna get into Lord of the Rings. I want to get into Lord of the Rings. We're gonna do that. Thank you for watching. See you in day 27.